Whether they're entertaining the audience, scaring them to death, or just being so annoying that it makes their final defeat all the more satisfying, there's no denying that audiences love a good villain. So much so, in fact, that there are actually plenty of bad movies out there that still manage to have acclaimed and iconic villains, sometimes to the point of even being hailed as the only thing in them worth watching. In fact, one might even say that most of the time, the villain is actually the easiest part of any story to get right, as long as certain crucial elements of theirs are met. Kind of says a lot about how badly Disney has been screwing up their own villains, doesn't it? But setting that aside for right now, the point is that if there's one thing a movie is most likely to get right, even when everything else is done wrong or stacked against it, it's having a good bad guy. And today, I'd like to take a look at a few movies where this is generally considered to be the case in order to demonstrate this point. And there will be spoilers for any movies mentioned, so in case there's something you don't want ruined, you might just want to be on the lookout. This will be your one and only warning. Okay, so to start off with one of the best examples I can give, there's Thomas and the Magic Railroad. The only theatrically released movie to date starring everybody's favorite tank engine. This movie was met with an absolutely horrendous production. And not helping matters was the writer's decision to combine 3 different TV shows together into one movie, as well as going against many of the fundamental elements of the original Thomas TV show, all in the name of making it feel bigger, and other problems such as difficulties casting voices for the trains. So, needless to say, things weren't exactly smooth to begin with. But where things really fell off the rails, if you'll pardon the expression, was test screenings that left parents complaining about the movie's intended villain, P.T. Boomer, as well as other minor elements. So as a result, the movie was completely re-edited to remove him and change some other things around, leading to a final product that critics hated and left anybody that was over 7 years old extremely confused. But despite all of that, there was still one thing about this movie that everybody could pretty much agree they liked. And that was the new main villain, Diesel 10. Armed with a surprisingly menacing hydraulic claw and sounding straight out of Hoboken, many have said that he is the one thing that makes the movie watchable for them. And why is that? Because he's pretty much everything a villain should be. He's extremely entertaining, yet also very threatening, is pure evil in an over-the-top fashion, and can be comical at times as befitting a young kid's villain. But it's mainly the fact that whenever he shows up on screen, things immediately get serious fast. The only times there's comedy in a scene he's in is if it's coming from Diesel himself. Otherwise, he's always played dead seriously every time he appears. And considering he actually has some genuinely evil goals, despite the lightheartedness of the movie, wanting to kill and destroy all steam engines, living steam engines, mind you, he most definitely earns that fear he evokes from the audience and the characters. Because again, kids movie or not, the writers do not pull their punches when it comes to making his malicious intentions crystal clear. I mean, at one point he tries to get information from our human main character by threatening to drop him to his death if he doesn't talk. And keep in mind, all of that is played perfectly straight. And the part where he tries to scrap James honestly feels like something out of a horror movie. In this scene, we see a train audiences had come to care about for years beforehand, and a lovable goofball almost be dropped into a blazing inferno, all the while Diesel laughs and threatens them with his sharp claw. Again, of course his intentions are never explicitly stated, but it's pretty dang clear that he fully intended on murdering the two of them, and it's only through dumb luck that they get away. It may be over quickly, but for that 1 minute, things get really dark. And that's honestly what makes him so effective. This is Thomas the Tank Engine. You couldn't get much more calm, low stakes, and relaxing entertainment if you went looking for it. But the moment Diesel 10 arrives, all of that goes right out the window. Again, the threat this guy poses is real, and even if they always get the drop on him, there's never a doubt in the audience's mind that the next time he shows up, that he may very well do something truly horrible in a kid's movie. And that's probably also why most people say that the chase scene at the climax is the best part of the movie, because Diesel 10 is still such a genuine threat that it makes the scene actually feel tense, even armed with the knowledge that them getting away is basically a foregone conclusion. And even then, they once again only defeat him through blind luck. Seriously, the amount of times he almost succeeds in his goals throughout the movie is honestly staggering. And his threat level, combined with the fact that he can be genuinely funny, as well as charismatic, yet genuinely relishing and enjoying every minute of being pure evil, honestly makes for a villain that is much better than the movie he's in. Once again, he's pretty much everything you could ever want in a villain. He's menacing, effective, charismatic, fun to watch, and just plain evil and loving it. And I think the voice also helps. If you ask me, he has the perfect kind of voice for a villain of his nature. But again, it's really no wonder people saw him as a standout of the movie. Though you almost have to wonder what P.T. Boomer was like for him to look acceptable by comparison. And that's honestly what makes his success even more impressive here. He wasn't even intended to be the main villain. He was only meant to be a secondary nuisance. And yet, even after all that editing and suddenly having the full weight of being the main villain placed squarely on his shoulders, or claw, he still managed to run away with the entire movie and be the most memorable thing in it. And if that isn't the mark of a truly impressive villain, then I honestly don't know what is. Or to use another example of this, take Ridley Scott's 1985 movie Legend. Famously having seemingly 100 different cuts to it, and each one possessing a different tone and scenes deleted and restored, this movie is generally dismissed by most people as boring and confusing. Sure, it isn't considered unwatchable by any means, but apart from one or two elements, most people just find it too confusing to properly appreciate. But there is one thing that absolutely everybody appreciates and remembers after seeing this, however, with that being darkness. The epitome of all that is dark and evil, and even resembling the devil himself to boot. This is not a character that is easily forgotten. From the makeup that proves just how overused CGI is, to his surprisingly somewhat soulful portrayal, to being played by the incomparable Tim Curry. When this guy is on screen, the audience is completely enthralled. Seriously, nobody could play a bad guy like Curry. And his performance here is so amazing, I might even go as far as to say he deserved an Academy Award nomination for it. Just take a look at the final fight between him and Jack. He's so convincing that it doesn't even feel like an actor in a costume anymore, but like you're seeing a genuine battle to the death against an actual demon. I mean, do you see how evil, menacing, and angry he is? He truly not only looks, but feels like something that's come straight out of hell. But even putting aside Curry's absolutely perfect acting for a second, there's also the way he's written. Because he isn't just some demon that wants to plunge the world into eternal night. Though he is still all of that to be sure, but while he's every bit as evil as he appears, he also has a softer side that's heavily explored. When he encounters the female lead, he finds himself infatuated with her goodness and beauty, and so tries to seduce her into becoming his evil queen. And his attempts to charm her do feel surprisingly genuine, even if it's still obvious he's evil to his very core and will likely kill her if she refuses him. But the point is, for a villain that looks just like the devil, he doesn't exactly behave like one. Sure, maybe his tenderness is all an act, or maybe there's a small part of him that means what he's saying. But we as the audience will never know, and that's part of what makes him so fascinating. Because again, while at the end of the day he's still pure evil, it does make one wonder if there's truly more to him than that. And Tim Curry's masterful performance only drives this point home. Is it all the perfect act, as befitting the devil, or not? His evil laugh, on the other hand, leaves nothing to the imagination. Seriously, if there was anything in this world that perfectly represented pure evil, it would be Darkness's laughter. Now, sure, in this case, Darkness isn't the only reason people watch this movie, as there are other good characters and concepts that might leave people interested. But Darkness is still most definitely the best part of this movie, hands down. To the point that Tim Curry's acting was once ranked as the best performance by anyone in a bad movie. And many bemoaned the fact that he doesn't truly appear until the final half hour. And honestly, it is a shame he didn't have more screen time, if only because for playing villains so well, Curry rarely got to play ones that were worthy of his incredible talents. And getting to play basically the devil himself, along with the character being written pretty darn well, honestly gives us an opportunity to see what Curry could really do when given a villain that was worthy of his caliber. So for it to last such a short time really is a shame. But setting that aside, the point is that while opinions of the movie as a whole may vary wildly, everybody can agree that Darkness ironically shines the brightest of all, thanks in no small part due to the perfect casting of Tim Curry. Now, obviously I could list plenty of other examples of this, but I think I've made my point quite clear. Even in flawed movies, bad movies, movies with troubled productions, and everything in between, the one consistent usually seems to be that if there's one character that's going to be done right and be remembered, it's going to be the villain. And as a man who's written books myself, I believe the main reason for this is because the villain can actually be pretty easy to write, all things considered. As long as their motivation makes sense, they're even halfway effective in carrying out their goals, and have a memorable personality, it's pretty much a guarantee that they'll be a standout, especially if the movie as a whole suffers from problems. And considering that's pretty much the default way to write a bad guy, it's really no wonder why it's so easy to get them right. Now, obviously, there are also plenty of bad movies, and even some good ones, actually. To have a bad or unmemorable villain, So obviously genuine effort does still have to be put into them in order for them to be good, as with anything that's worth being good. All I'm saying is that they're generally one of the easier characters in a story to get right most of the time. And of course, making sure they're well cast is also very important, which is another reason why both of those aforementioned examples work so well. But even then, that's only some of the reasons why the villain usually stands out even in subpar movies. Although, as I already said, that's never a guarantee, just what's most likely to be the case. Heck, there have even been movies that were a huge hit with audiences simply because they had the perfect villain, but that's not exactly relevant here. Okay, that's everything I had to say on that. So now why don't you tell me? What's your favorite bad movie with a fantastic villain? And why do you believe villains tend to be the most well-written characters in bad movies? However you feel, please let me know in the comments below. And like always, you don't have to agree with me on this video. You are just as entitled to your own opinion on this as I am or anybody else. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it. And I hope to see you all next time.